Transition Radio TV brought to you by thebreastformstore.com. They have everything you could possibly need for your transgender or cross-dressing needs. Visit their website at www.breastformstore.com and tell them Transition Radio sent you.
The following ingredients include a look behind the scenes. Cook uncovered until hot. Add grooves to taste.
I would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Once upon a time, there was a little girl.
The accident was over a year ago. A second woman has been elected president. A 12th planet has been named in the solar system. The last wild polar bear has died. I slept through it all. I was here for my waking. He called it a beginning. He said it was good. I think he may have thought that anything I did was good.
Welcome to Transition Radio, live from Hollywood, Florida, with your host and hostess, Mark Angelo and Jessica Lynn Cummings. Show for trans folks by trans folks, here to let your voice be heard. Hello, and welcome to another edition of Transition Radio TV. So glad you're able to join us yet again on a Sunday. We got good news for you. We're going to be changing the show day, and probably in June. We're going to make it Thursday nights at 9 p.m. I know Sundays is rough for a lot of people to watch the show. You want to be out, especially in summertime. Now that we have our new baby girl, our little precious little Chihuahua mini pincher mix, which she's asleep right now, so we're not going to wake her up because if not, she'll start barking. But that'll be a good time to go to the beach, take her to the park, and all that good stuff. But we will let you know as soon as that happens. Absolutely. Today, we have an amazing show. You guys are just going to love this show. This is an amazing individual. Emily Moran Barwick is a vegan, an artist, an activist, writer, animal lover, bookworm, a fruit ninja, and many other things. She focuses her artistic practice on bringing to light things we, as society, don't want to acknowledge.
To say that humans have the anatomical structure of an omnivore is an egregiously inaccurate statement. The great taxonomist Carolus Linnaeus, 1707 to 1778, a Swedish nutritionalist and botanist who established the modern scientific method of classifying plants and animals, classified humans not as carnivorous, not as omnivores, nor even as herbivores, but as frugivores. Yes,
frugivores. And by the way, he's a naturalist, not a nutritionist. But I'm sure
he's naturalist, didn't I?
No, but it doesn't matter. But anyway, he might not like the fact that you called him. He's dead anyway. It doesn't matter. Linnaeus writes, man's structure, internal and external, compared with that of other animals, show that fruit and succulent vegetables are his natural food. A few anthropologists have risen above their biases, one such as Jared Diamond, a professor of anthropology at UCLA. Diamond has written that the notion of man, the hunter, is a romantic myth. Big game hunting added little to our food intake until after we had evolved fully modern anatomy and behavior.
Instead, our earliest ancestors lived on the wild fruits, nuts, seeds, and tubers that they gathered. Mr. Diamond puts it succinctly. I doubt the usual view that hunting was the driving force behind our uniquely human brain and societies. For most of our history, we were not mighty hunters, but rather sophisticated baboons.
And what food makes up the bulk of baboon diet? Well, it's fruit, of course. So for most of their history, humans were fruitarians. And this is a quote by Rin Berry.
Now, welcome to our show, the amazingly creative Emily Barwick. Hey, Emily.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you for being on our show. That was an amazingly powerful
Absolutely.
video. I'm
Wow.
like, wow. Most people really don't get it, and I'm not going to judge anyone because everyone is on their path. Actually, you and I met on a group called 30 Bananas. I was a raw vegan for 13 months. I'm still a vegan. I just now eat brown rice and things like that. I started losing way too much weight. I was down to like 102 pounds. But most people don't think what they're putting in their mouth. But the passion that you have, I highly respect, and that you use this art form to help educate and bring awareness.
Yeah.
So, kudos to you.
Absolutely.
Thank you
And that
so
was
much.
that was a very powerful video. Holy
Extremely.
cow.
That hurt, I'm sure. I mean,
It was a very powerful experience. So,
I'm sure it was. But it's, you know, sometimes we have to feel what others feel, and animals have feelings too, to realize what are we doing here. And again, I'm not judging anyone. I don't want anyone to feel judged. We all have to be on our journey, on our path to realize certain things. And hopefully everyone on this planet will wake up soon enough to realize what we've done and what we're doing.
Absolutely. Let me ask you, how did that feel when they cut your beautiful head of hair off that you had? I was like, oh my God.
I knew it was going to happen, and I mean, obviously it was something that I planned, and it was important to me because it was kind of showing the loss of individuality that animals go through. And you know, I'd been growing my hair out for years and years, and so it was also kind of like a loss to myself. And but while it was happening, I had so many endorphins going that I wasn't even really quite aware. I was just hoping everything would go well.
Wow.
Well, that it did. It was an awesome video. Which brings me to my first question. Well, actually, now that would make it my second question.
Right.
That was an amazingly powerful video. What did you hope to accomplish by making this masterpiece?
What I was really hoping to get with this is to show a lot of times, like, humans, we have a hard time empathizing with, you know, other individuals that are not of our species, but when we see another human going through some sort of suffering or pain or hardship, we can connect. And so, like, this, you know, whole endeavor of being branded and everything kind of was just to highlight, you know, what it is that these animals go through on a daily basis, like, all over the world. And it's interesting because I had a lot of people get very, were really uncomfortable about it. They thought it was very extreme. I heard that a lot, that this is too extreme what you're doing. And I even wrote an editorial about how it was funny that people found my performance extreme when I was voluntarily doing this. And this same thing and many other worse atrocities are, you know, committed against many, many animals every single day. You know, and I just got, you know, burned and I was bald for a little bit. But, you know, animals are losing their lives, they're tortured. And to me, that's what's extreme, is you know, requiring that for my meal. I find that to be extreme. What I did, I don't find to be that out of sorts, actually.
Not at all. You were bringing awareness. And as we know, dairy, big dairy and big meat industries, they've brainwashed individuals to believe that you need to eat animal protein to be healthy, and that's furthest from the truth. I mean, it's one thing that I've tried to educate a lot of my clients. I'm a certified nutrition consultant, and they always ask me, well, how do you get your protein? Well, there's more protein in spinach, pound for pound, than there is in a piece of cooked meat, or raw meat for that matter. I mean, people don't realize we're not meant to eat that. But
not to mention the carcinogens that we're eating is what's causing all our cancer.
That is why we're so filled with cancer and all sorts of diseases. But you know, there's a big world out there that benefits from people getting sick. There's a big world out there that benefits from having people eat things that they're not supposed to. Absolutely. And we're fighting a giant.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I've had people in the same breath like comment on, like, oh, you look really strong and muscular. Like, what do you do for your workouts? And I'll talk about my workouts. And then if they find out I'm vegan, they still ask, well, what about your protein? And it's like, we just talked about the okay, whatever. You know, it's
and I goes, yeah, and it's like,
we all have.
What do cows eat? What do horses eat? What do big gorillas eat? They don't eat meat,
elephants,
and they're strong.
You know, they're not hurting for protein.
No,
No.
not at all. But you know, it's like again, it's brainwashing, and that they've done a great job on brainwashing society, and they don't really think why are we such a violent society, and it's because everything we eat has suffering. Everything we eat has gone through some sort of violent process. I mean, the chicken, whatever they call them, the chicken factories or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw that movie Food Inc., and I highly recommend people to watch that. You'll never want to eat a piece of chicken again. It's why would you want to put something like that in your body? Your body is your temple. This is something that's for you to take care of. And why would you want to put suffering and cause suffering on something else? There's plenty of food to eat.
And why do you think people get sick from it? Because it's karma coming back.
Yeah, exactly. But you know all this. I mean, it's like I'm preaching to the choir. So you're very passionate about many things. I think being a vegan and animal rights seems to be on the top of the list. What got you started in all of this?
Well, actually, strangely enough, like my first inkling about it was actually relayed to me from my mother. Like apparently when I was 4 years old, I don't consciously remember this, I started to refuse to eat meat. I wasn't having it anymore. But I've always just had like a strong passion for animals and, you know, great empathy with them, and never really understood what the things that we do as a society. And as soon as I was, you know, able to even know what happened behind the scenes, which is, you know, kept from most of us, like as soon as I knew, I wanted to stop participating in that, and I wanted to do what I could to try to get the word out. I mean, the animal industries do everything they can to, you know, hide from view what it is that goes into making our food, because even, you know, people who eat meat, typically they're not bad people. It's just they don't really know what goes into it, and they don't really want to know. It's easier for us to just not think about it. But I've always just had, I don't know, I've always really empathized with any minority or any you know, individual, whether they're human or any other species that is, you know, being discriminated against or being killed, or, you know, any kind of downtrodden group. To me, and just my heart goes out to them. And the animals, above all other, you know, groups and individuals that are discriminated against, they can't speak for themselves, you know, and so they don't even have a voice in this battle.
And that's so true, you know, and it's really funny you mentioned about the time you were little. When I was a young girl, and now I'm a big man now anyway, but they would try to make me eat meat, and I would chew on this thing and chew and chew, and it just like didn't feel normal to me. I just wanted to like get a piece of paper and throw it away or feed it to the dog. And it's like they would try so hard, and it just upset my stomach. Like I knew that's not what I was supposed to eat. And here you have, I want to add to this, you have a group of people that claim to be animal lovers, you know, animal rights, but yet they're eating all sorts of animal products. Well, would you eat your dog or your cat? No. So it's the same thing. Just because they're not your pet,
Yeah.
they're living things that need to be respected and loved, you know, and you don't love them. I mean, I know people say, well, I love my burger. Well, that's not the way you're supposed to love them. You know, it's just like, there's no need for that. There's plenty of food.
That's crazy.
And go ahead and really mention, you have a website that you educate
yes.
people on this.
Well, what I've been doing most recently to try to educate about veganism is I've created a website called bitesizevegan.com. So it's just, you know, bite-size vegan, because I've made all of these videos that are pretty short. You know, I try to keep them, they're all under 5 minutes, some are even under 2 minutes. And it just provides like kind of beginner information about veganism, why to be vegan, you know, what different aspects of it. And I'm hoping that they're coming from a more approachable place, you know, because I'm aiming them to be at non-vegans. Because like I said, it's not that necessarily people are evil. A lot of times they're just uneducated and uninformed. And as an animal activist and a vegan, you know, there are times that I get very, very passionate about my beliefs, but I also know that browbeating people or, you know, punching someone in the face who's eating a steak is not really going to help the animals. And so I'm hoping that this will educate. And in there I talk about, you know, stopping world hunger, like how world hunger can be, you know, stopped through veganism. And I, you know, talk about health, and I talk about all kinds of different aspects of it. But I also address, like, even if you're not into health, you can still be a junk food vegan. You know, that's not something I really advocate, but it's possible. So even if you just think that all you have to do is eat lettuce and celery. It's not true. You can eat all kinds of foods.
Yeah, there's a lot of meat substitutes. There's a lot of products that are made out of soy, which is not good to eat a lot of that either. But there are, I mean, for somebody who wants to start and feels that they're missing something if they don't have a piece of steak or a piece of chicken in their plate, there's a lot of these substitutes that taste pretty decent, you know, and it's a way of like weaning yourself off and then going the other route. And I tell you, I've never felt better in my life when I just ate fruits and greens. I started getting a little too skinny, but I felt invincible. I mean, I could run 7 miles like nothing.
Yeah, exactly. I stopped eating pork and beef over 2.5 years ago, and I can't tell you the amazing amount of body fat that I lost just from not eating beef and pork. And then I stopped eating chicken. I kind of cheated and went back to eating chicken a little bit, but I saw that Food Inc. and it made me kind of veer off chicken for a little while. And now just occasionally I'll have something with chicken in it, very rarely, but you know, mostly fish and veggies and fruits and stuff. And my body's thanked me for it in a lot of ways, and I see the way that it's thanked me. So
that's what I try to highlight in like my videos, is like the multiple angles of it, because you know, with pork, like you're saying, pigs are like some of the most intelligent animals on the planet, you know, and they're much smarter than any breed of dog, and they've actually outperformed 3-year-old humans, you know, within certain tests, and we eat them very readily and without thinking. And so, but even if like intelligence isn't an aspect that bothers people, you can also talk about health and the fact that we can't really digest pork, and it basically starts to rot in our colon. It takes about 3 days for it to pass through. And when you cook pork, the juice that comes off is like the same chemical composition as urine, because pigs they don't sweat, so they don't really excrete their waste. It just kind of hangs in the meat. And then as far as like when you're talking about chickens, like I talked in one of my videos, like 99% of the chicken that is sold in America, the poultry that we have, is cooled in these big vats of water that contain fecal matter and all kinds of slough that's come off of the birds. And so it actually plumps up the birds so that they can charge more to the customer. And it's banned in Europe, but like America, they still rock it out pretty hard. So there's all kinds of reasons.
Thank you. You just totally cured me from eating chicken ever again.
To me, it's just there's no need for that, you know. No. And when you eat food that are high in nutritional value, like fruits and vegetables, you get to eat more. I mean, I would sit there and eat these huge bowls. I would create these salads with celery and greens of all sorts and cut up fruits and just like ate till my stomach got like one of those kids from Ethiopia.
Just slap a big red suit on you.
But, you know, once you because it digests really quickly, then the stomach goes back to normal. And people look at me like, you're so skinny. How do you fit all that in you? It's because that's what we're supposed to eat, you know. And again, you can't.
I get that, and I love it because I love to eat. And so for me, it's like the perfect solution. Like Definitely. I love eating. The more food I can eat, the better. So it works really well.
And we're meant to eat that way. We're meant to eat a lot. That's why people have a lot of eating disorders, because they're eating, but their body's not receiving the nutrient. We're eating nutrient-dense food. So when you eat foods that are loaded with vitamins and minerals and waters and all sorts of stuff, you can eat and eat and eat and eat, and your body knows what to do with it. Otherwise, it just stores it as fat. And that's what most people don't understand. But
Well, I gotta say, Emily, you definitely have a unique way of expressing creativity. Share with our viewers the different techniques you use as an art form.
Okay, well, I mean, over my time as an artist, you know, I write, you know, and I have a couple of published editorials, and I hope to continue and actually publish a book at some point. I do a lot of performance pieces in my art. I've done a lot of experiential type things. I started the lap dance scholarship I did through my entire graduate career, where I was funding different art projects by dancing at a strip club and, you know, kind of talking about where our money comes from. And so I've done a lot of things that are experiential in nature. I've also made sculptural pieces. And then most recently I'm, you know, doing this video project with the Bite Size Vegan to help educate through that. And then I also just try to, in a sense, I feel like the way my life is like part of my art. I don't know if any artist can like really detach themselves from that. So it's kind of something I'm conscious of at all times and in every aspect of my life.
Interesting.
Very much so. Well, speaking of, here is a video where you use self and life experiences to paint a picture. Let's take a look at that one.
The back of my wrists feel like they're on fire. I'm 7 years old. I'm at gymnastics practice in Jacksonville, Florida. We have this balance beam that's kind of low to the ground, and it's covered in carpet. I'm running back and forth next to it. First my right arm out, and then my left. I'm pressing down into the fabric hard and sprinting. I can feel my skin burning. I feel my heart racing. I feel peace. This would all just be better if I was fucking dead. I'm 24. I'm sitting in my car in Iowa City, Iowa, in the middle of running a million different errands. I close my eyes and let myself fantasize for just a second. It would be such a relief. Oh, but then of course there's all my belongings that my family would have to deal with, you know. I mean, there's all my things in my house, and I have a storage unit full, and then I have my studio, and I mean, I know my sister and my mom don't have time to come to Iowa and deal with my estate. And then there's Ubi to think of, you know, someone's got to feed my dog, and I got to tie up the loose ends at school and work, and I mean, honestly, this is going to take a lot of preparation and planning time, and you know what, just fuck it. Guess I'll just keep running my errands. I remember wishing that I could freeze time and run around while everyone else was being still. Oh my God, me too. I'm 15. I'm outside the library at Episcopal High School in Jacksonville, Florida, and I'm listening to some of my classmates talk about childhood fantasies. I've walked over to them in an effort to make friends. This seems like an opportunity for bonding over shared experience. I wait for a pause in the conversation, and I try to contribute. Oh, me too. You know, I remember I used to wish that I could get some sort of terminal cancer or AIDS or lose a limb. I mean, my sister and I used to watch Rescue 911, that show, and I would always hope that like I could be that kid who lost his leg to the lawnmower. There's silence. They look confused. Maybe they didn't see that episode. Look, I don't know what to do anymore. I'm so fucking uncomfortable. I feel like I'm gonna crawl out of my skin. I feel like I've tried everything. I can't stand a day. I can't even get through a minute. I don't know what to do. My therapist looks at me concerned. He furrows his brow. You know what, Emily? Maybe you should, take up social drinking. You know, take the edge off. Wow, how did you get such great abs? This woman is looking at me quizzically. I'm 25. I'm in the locker room changing into my swimsuit at Mercer in Iowa City. I'm trying to think of, what do I say to her? Oh, you know, it's super simple. Just eat until you feel like you're about to explode and then contract from the bottom of your abs up and purge the weight of the food out. It's very effective. I start thinking in my head of this exercise video with a woman clad in spandex saying, and binge and purge. I have all this going in my head, and I realize that I've taken much longer than is socially appropriate to respond, and she is still waiting. Oh, crunches? I'm bloated.
That was an amazing video, and if people want to watch the entire video, they could go on your YouTube channel. We just kind of showed 4 minutes and 38 seconds because it's a pretty long video, but I wanted people to actually see that. Explain to us what was the whole cutting of
The string.
the string.
The string? Well, I had this project that I kind of started when I first started grad school that I called like self-mapping, and I have a hard time kind of placing everything in my life, and so I literally put up these sheets of paper on my studio walls and had a column for each year, and was going back and would fill in, you know, information about what happened, where I was, and I would take stuff from my journals, from my family members. And so anytime there was an event that was supported by a journal or something, I would have a pen that would have a red string on it that would go to a blow up of that journal entry or whatever proof. And it was almost like trying to find myself through going back and looking at all the details, which I knew was actually fruitless, but the practice to me was very interesting. And so it kind of pulled from that like every string is a story, is an incident, is, you know, something in my history that created who I am. And then the cutting of the ties kind of speaks to, like, you know, this is what I came from, but it doesn't mean that this is who I am, and I don't have to be restrained by it. So that's kind of the visual that I was going for.
Definitely
Awesome.
very therapeutic and very powerful, I'm sure, because it's like people go and pay all these hundreds of dollars to psychiatrists to try to help them, but when you're able to map out your life and go back and deal with things, and then, like you said, almost like cutting that umbilical cord or cutting that, it's like it no longer affects me. This was my story in the past, it's not my present. So to me, that's very powerful. I wanted to share that I too struggled many years with bulimia, and it's very debilitating. You know, can you share your story with our viewers regarding your issues with food and at that point of your life? Because I know you no longer have that, but I want you to share with our viewers.
Absolutely. For me, my bulimia was, you know, it was a drug. I actually kind of came at it from a bit of a different perspective than is typically done. So it wasn't to me about my body image or trying to lose weight. And in fact, I gained a lot of weight when I was bulimic. But to me, it was just to get out of my brain. And I never took to alcohol or drugs. I didn't like them. So I was just, I'm a food addict. And I found that was what turned off my brain. And that was what got me out of myself. And that was what gave me momentary peace, even though it, of course, like made my life miserable, you know, in its eventuality. And I was a very violent, long-going bulimic for probably close to 10 years, and was very extreme within the practices. And I'm very lucky that I'm alive, honestly, and that I didn't damage myself further. But it was just my way of trying to escape. And I started self-harming. I would cut myself when I was 7, and that just started like daily basis. And when I, you know, quote unquote, discovered the plethora of food out there, that was my true love, so to speak. And I tried to as soon as I started, I was trying to stop. But for anyone with an eating disorder, you know that it's incredibly cyclical, and it's very inherent within you. Anyone with an addiction. And what I finally found that is working for me is doing a 12-step like recovery approach to my food. And so, you know, yeah, I'm not an alcoholic, or, you know, and I didn't do a street drug, but it's the exact same thing. And so with that, and like with that support, I've been able to not be practicing the bulimia.
Wow. I never really understood the difference between bulimia and anorexia. Do you have an answer for that?
Yeah, and anorexia is typically like the medical definition is when you have lost such a great amount of weight, like a certain percentage of your full body weight. A lot of times it's they talk about the cessation of period and everything, but it's more so like obsessing about how much you eat, really reducing calories. A lot of times there's overly exercise involved, And then some anorexics do purge. As far as like the DSMV, you know, is concerned, like bulimia is more so when you eat large quantities of food and you purge, and this is like done repeatedly. And you know, some things get muddy, but more or less anorexia is restricting your calories, and bulimia is binging and then purging, whether through vomiting, laxatives, or exercise.
Yeah, and I think anorexia, I mean, as a medical professional, and I've studied all these different conditions, anorexia is more of a body image. People see themselves fat even though they could be weighing 92 pounds. And like you said, some of them do purge, but it's more of like having the power to restrict the amount of foods that they could take in. Bulimia, on the other hand, you eat and you eat, and it's almost like you're never satisfied. It's like an emptiness, and food is trying to fulfill that void.
So there's more purging involved.
Exactly, because you get to the point that you're so full that you can't, but your stomach is full, but in your mind you're not. And so it's like an emptiness that you're constantly trying to fill. Achieve. And it just never happens. And it's very debilitating.
Wow.
Tremendously, because I was both at one time. I was anorexic and bulimic.
Wow.
And I don't know if it had anything to do with my gender issues and things like that. And I still, to this day, I mean, when I look at my stomach, if I start getting a little big, I start getting all panicked. Like, oh no, wait a minute. It's like a whole, and it's tough. And there's deeper meaning behind all this. It's way beyond food. There's a lot of, and the show would take another 2 hours if I go into the whole thing, but it's definitely, you know, very debilitating.
Yeah.
I find that the fruitarian lifestyle is very helpful because, like, again, you get to eat and you know you're not going to hurt yourself because you're eating the good types of food and you feel satisfied. It's almost like when you're eating all the wrong kinds of foods and the burgers and the chips and you're eating, your body's not getting any nutrition. But when you eat the right kind of foods, then you finally feel like I'm full, I'm satisfied.
And that's one thing that's funny is when people, you know, find out that not only am I vegan, but I, you know, basically subsist on fruits and greens. You know, they're like, oh, I couldn't do that because I can't be hungry all the time. I was like, you don't understand. I'm a raging food addict. If I was hungry all the time, I'd be beating people up, you know, like I cannot eat in a manner in which I don't have some sort of satisfaction. Because unlike alcohol and drugs, I can't say, okay, I'm just not going to eat anymore. I have to interact with food. And my bulimia actually did start when I was in a treatment center, strangely enough. My OCD had like kind of blown out of proportion, and I did lose a lot of weight because I had restricted what I was eating, what I was spending, everything. And so it was like, oh, well, then she's anorexic. So I was put in an eating disorder clinic. And that was actually kind of my bulimic boot camp. It's kind of where I like found my true drug, is because I'm also a perfectionist. And they told me eating, like, the more you eat, the better you are. And I was like, I can recover. I can do this. Like, I'm so good at recovering. I can eat anything. And so I recovered myself back straight into bulimia. So that's actually how mine came about, which is...
Yeah, it's going from one extreme to the other. And it's funny you mentioned, because I also have OCD and I'm also a perfectionist. So looking at all the same things, like, wait a minute, we must be from the same planet or something, because it's almost like certain patterns, you know, that, wow.
Well, you're also very anal.
Well, yeah, well, that's part of being OCD and a perfectionist.
Okay, yeah. I'm blonde, so bear with me here.
Oh, yeah.
Let me ask, what advice do you have for those who are dealing with food addictions?
For me, like, what worked for me was, like I said, finding a 12-step program. And, I mean, it can be, there's a bunch of them out there, you know. Some of them are food-centric, some are not. Like, what is important for me in that is that I have, you know, support. I have people I can call. I have a sponsor that I talk to. I go to meetings regularly. It's something that I continue to practice. And I think that's what was kind of lacking in some other treatments that I tried, of like trying to become a normal eater, of just, oh, you just need to go out and eat like a normal person. It was really rewarding to me when I got to a place where a treatment center that treated eating disorders as an addiction, and they told me, no, you're an addict. You can't eat like a normal person. That's like telling a drinker that, okay, you just need to become a social drinker. Like, an alcoholic is not capable of that. So for me, it was actually very empowering to embrace the term addict and to know that it's a lifelong battle. And that doesn't mean that I'm, you know, like, I'm never gonna, you know, it's not that I'm never better, but the thing I love about the addiction model is that it's a continual journey, because this is not something that's just going to magically go away and I'm cured of. So it's something I do have to stay vigilant on, because it will just wait until I'm not really paying attention. And I've had many relapses in that kind of sense where I had the best intentions. So for me, it's like finding that kind of support group, getting a nutritionist and going on a meal plan. I still have a meal plan that I follow. And so, I mean, I go to a therapist as well. And so everyone kind of finds a different path. But for me, that's what finally helped me after like a decade of trying everything.
You know, what is really funny, and not in a ha-ha way, but the majority of people on this planet, we have some sort of addiction, we have some sort of issue. And to me, where it all stems from is we're living a very unnatural life. Back in the day when we were tribal people and we didn't have all this modern technology, people didn't have to work 9 to 5 and struggle and not get to be who they are. You know, you have to fit this perfect little mold in this box that society wants you to be. And so I believe all that creates neurosis in us and creates all sorts of issues, which, you know, pharmaceutical companies are benefiting tremendously, you know, and it's, I think if we went back to our native roots and we stopped living the lives that we're leading, we would actually cure a lot of the issues that we have and would stop being addicts, because I believe all of us have some sort of addiction, whether it's sex, food, drugs, alcohol, you know, you name it. I mean, I don't think there's one person alive that does not have some sort of addiction. And I think...
Take the words out of my mouth. I was going to ask you if there was a cure for your sex addiction.
No, my sex addiction has no cure. Thank you.
Dang.
And talking about sex...
Let's move on to the next question.
Yeah. Well, no, this next, it's actually going to go in very well in the next section. How do you identify in the spectrum of sexuality?
Okay. I tend to, if I have to call myself anything, I call myself omnisexual, because I know I'm not straight, but I find the term bisexual limiting because there's more than 2 genders, you know, and I mean, even biologically, there's more than 2 sexes, you know, individuals who are born intersex. And so to me, like, the term bisexual doesn't really encompass it. So I've always just said omnisexual, because there's all kinds of different ways that people identify and are. I do have a pretty incredible woman in my life right now who's on a solo campaign for my conversion to full gaydom. So we'll see if that happens. But as far as I tend to just identify as pretty much open. You know. And
that's a beautiful thing. I think humanity would be a lot happier if we did that. And we realize that it doesn't matter what's between your legs, that it all matters what's in your heart. And you can be attracted to many variety of different people. And just because you were born a female doesn't mean you have to be attracted solely to males, and vice versa.
Right.
So that omnisexual, or I don't know if it's close enough to the same thing as pansexual, which is what we identify as. Yeah. Meaning it's more or less the same thing.
Kind of a
similar definition, but
it's about loving for the person, not for, you know, genitalia or for belief.
Exactly. And I think we had that conversation a while back when we were in that group. And I think that's why I thought you'd be perfect for the show, because this is an LGBT platform to say, and we also bring in a lot of allies and things like that, but I thought that between your tremendous artistic ability, your passion, and that you are very open-minded, and I thought that would be great to have you on the show.
So. Absolutely, which actually I was very taken back with how accepting you are about transgender individuals. Do you know anyone that is transgender, and what are your views on this?
I have a friend from high school that transitioned after I knew him, and so I guess I've never really had any close friends like in my life that have transitioned while I've known them, but I've been, you know, aware of, you know, transgender issues, and I've, you know, met people tangentially or on the internet, but it's to me it was this kind of, I don't know when I first realized that was even a thing, but to me it's kind of like a non-issue. It's like, oh, okay, well, this person identifies as a woman and their body doesn't match, and so why would you not support someone trying to find their true identity? With things like this, it's interesting. I tend to to not even grasp what the problem is that some people have with this. Because I know that, like, you know, I identify as a woman, basically. I mean, I don't really think about it, but if I didn't, then I don't see how anyone could hold that against me if it was just something that didn't match. And also, I know individuals who identify as androgynous. You know, they don't even choose a gender. And I think, who is it? You know, I don't know. I guess I don't really even understand what the problem is that people have against, you know, any kind of gender issue. Like, people, you know, I want people to find where they feel like they're happy, and I don't know. It's kind of, to me, it's like a non-issue. I don't even know how to talk about it.
Absolutely.
And if everyone in the world thought that way, we wouldn't have wars. We would live in a very peaceful world. And it's, you know, let people be. And people don't really know the human body that greatly. They don't realize that gender is developed in the brain. It doesn't always match your genitals. Those that their genitals match the brain could consider themselves very lucky. There are many individuals
well,
that
not
are,
really. Even sorry to cut you off, but even people that are matched that way, they have other issues.
Well, yeah. I'm talking
issues.
about lucky in the sense that, okay, they look in the mirror, they look down below, everything is A-okay.
Right.
With us, we look in the mirror, we look down below, and we're like,
and we're like, WTF.
Okay, well, why do I just, it doesn't, and a lot of people don't get it, so they think we're deviant when we try to match our brains with our body, and it's become this big to-do, you know. It's, people will handle if someone tells them you're gay. Like when I told my mom I was going to transition to a guy, she goes, no, just stay a lesbian. And I'm like, wait, Mom, it's not about my sexuality, it's how I identify gender-wise. And funny enough, through the years, you know, it wasn't even about my sexuality, because here I am with a male to female who still has her male part. Well, part of it. No, because she removed her scrotum last week.
That's TMI. Yeah, I removed the portion of it. Let's put it that way.
But, so now my mom is really confused. Like, wait a minute, you just went through all this and you're now, so yeah. It's really interesting. But that's life.
There was actually a point in my life where I thought I was fully gay. I thought I was a lesbian. And it was funny because when I told this to my mom, like, her reaction was kind of sweet. It was like, well, if you're going to go to a sleepover at a friend's house, do I still let you do that? You know, because I have female friends. And so it was like kind of made it really complicated for her. But I guess like what makes me feel, or like I guess the same part of my nature that makes me so open to any kind of gender choice is also what drives my veganism. It's just, you know, this passion for letting any individual live their life, you know, regardless of, you know, any kind of gender issue or what species they are. It all comes from the same place.
Exactly. Well, before we show our next video clip regarding the John Holmes Prick Parade, tell us what inspired this and what are your hopes what do you hope to accomplish with this?
Well, this was kind of a long time in the making, strangely. I worked at a novelty store in Florida, and I encountered the John Holmes mold. Like it's a toy literally made from John Holmes's penis, and it's astronomically large. But it's something that's marketed, like mass marketed around the world, and I just found it to be so like bizarre to think about the fact that there's this porn star's like disembodied body part that is, you know, being mass marketed so he can posthumously have sex with like random people, and you know he's not even alive anymore. And to me it's just like so like the level of absurdity when you really think about it, and it speaks so much to like the commodification of the body and you know the creation of like, or taking someone's physical self and making it a product, you know, making it something that you sell, which we see, you know, all the time. Like, you know, we sell sex and ads and everything, but this is like very literally someone's body part being sold as a product, as a toy. And so to me, it was just this really fascinating look at you know, kind of what we as humans do, but like we don't really think fully about what it is that's happening. So that's what kind of like sparked it for me.
God, could you imagine having that as a shrine to your remembrance? It's like, yeah.
He probably said, "I want to be remembered by
passed
something."
away, but his dick still lives on. Wait, I should have said penis. Sorry.
It doesn't matter. Anyway, you can roll the video anytime you want, Joe.
And I hope that it does provoke some thought. A graduate student's art exhibit is turning some heads in Iowa City. That's because the exhibit centers around the male anatomy of a dead pornographic movie star. KCRG TV9's Mark Carlson got a chance to tour the exhibit today. And Mark, it's memorable.
Well, Beth, it sure is. And the artist says she's hoping to have a pretty big turnout. Now, we do want to warn you, some of what you're about to see is geared for more of a mature audience. White walls, bright lights, simple podiums, all pretty typical in an art gallery. But this week, the Eve Drulow Gallery is anything but typical.
Well, there's one that's the Incredible Hulk's. It's the large green one.
This is a gallery full of penises, nearly 3 dozen of them.
The university reviewed the exhibit, and it met all the guidelines, and so it's been allowed to go forward because it's a matter of artistic expression.
Artist Emily Barwick says she got the idea after coming across a casting of porn star John Holmes' penis at a novelty store in Florida.
It's interesting that there's this company that actually literally owns the rights to this reproducible part of a man's actual body, and something so personal.
Now, after a year of sculpting, designing, and seeking help from friends and students, Barwick says she's created her own parade of the male anatomy.
And I thought about the Herkion parade and how we could do our own parade.
The exhibit is displayed in a public gallery, and so we took the precaution of closing the door so that no one inadvertently passing by would be exposed to something they may not want to see.
Originally, they made this little sign that was like, "The gallery's open," and so a friend of mine helped me make this larger sign so that people would be very aware that the gallery was open.
It's now the public's turn to decide, and Barwick hopes that they won't jump to conclusions just because of what stands behind closed doors.
I mean, it's unfortunate in a way, because I would like it to be more inviting, but I also understand, people are entitled to their opinions.
Barwick says the School of Art has been very supportive with this project, and the gallery is open daily through the rest of the week.
It kills me that people are so anti-genitals. It's like, hello, you're born with it from the time you're little. It's there. It's like, nudity. There's nothing wrong with nudity. There's nothing wrong with genitals. It's like, and it's only really in America. Americans are so uptight about everything. You notice that? It's like,
look at how the newscasters were handling everything.
Yeah, it's
this
like,
is
oh my God,
towards a mature audience. It's about artwork.
It was so strange to me that they had to close the doors and everything. And I actually said in my artist statement, I was talking a lot about how, I mean, you can go to a museum and there's nude women over the place, and you can bring your child and it's considered cultured. But then, this exhibit with the male anatomy is all of a sudden like shocking and dismaying for people. And I actually ended up having another news encounter with the lap dance scholarship. My entire thesis and my entire MFA show was about, the lap dance scholarship, and it also had like a life-size naked me in stripper heels with a metal panel next to it that had clothing, and you could do like kind of mix and match like a paper doll but life-size. And so I didn't even wait for them to tell me to close the doors. I just made curtains for the door this time, so that they didn't have to close down my exhibit or my show.
Yeah, it's crazy. And art is art. It's like, I don't understand society.
Well, that's kind of like our first logo. Should I go into this one?
We don't really have time to go into that.
Oh, okay, yeah, we're running
ahead,
shallow on time.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me ask, what do you hope your amazingly creative way of expressing your views through art will accomplish in our world? And what are your views with what our world has turned to, and how do you think we can change all of this? That was a long question.
That was a loaded question. I write long ones sometimes.
That's a lot. I mean, like, if nothing else, I hope that my art just makes, kind of makes us address the things that we don't want to look at, and that's why my artist site is like a room for elephants, because we never want to talk about the elephant in the room. Like, we don't want to. We don't want to look behind the curtain. We don't want to know what goes on in the choices that we make. We just want to be able to do what we want and have it be okay. And so I'm really hoping, especially with my vegan and animal activism, I hope to reach more people that will consider going vegan and maybe actually go vegan, and then maybe even fight for the animals, because it's a really overwhelming battle. You know, when I think about how the world is now, I very often get extremely overwhelmed by, you know, the amount of suffering and the amount of lives lost and, you know, everything. And it does feel like a losing battle. And I feel like it's very easy as an artist or an activist to become really fatigued and just kind of give up. And so I work really hard to try to make the difference that I can. And my biggest hope is that, you know, my work gets seen and it, you know, changes people's behavior and influences choices. Because more than anything, that's what's driving this. You know, you never find someone who says, oh yeah, I totally support factory farms, and yet they wouldn't be around if we stopped eating the products that they're producing. And so it's like, by the choices we make, we're endorsing, you know, practices that we might not even morally agree with, you know, and that's in and outside of veganism as well.
Exactly. And, you know, if people had to go and literally kill the cow, skin it, cut it, and have bloods all over their hands, they wouldn't eat it. But because they go to the store, or they go to the restaurant, it's flapped right there in front of them, they'll eat it. So if they really thought about what they're doing, it would not, I don't understand, but, you know, it takes different people to make up this world, and like I said, I don't want to judge.
It is an exhausting practice. I mean, I kind of have always, for some reason, been able to, like, when I look at a piece of meat, like I see the animal, the individual whose life was taken for that. Or when I see milk or dairy, I see the baby calves that are being ripped away from their mothers, and then, you know, the mother calves who are slaughtered after 4 years because they're so exhausted and spent, when a cow can actually live 25 years. And so whenever I see like a piece of cheese, like, that is what comes into my mind. I've heard it described as X-ray vision. Like, once you realize like where things are coming from, then you can't look at anything the same anymore, and you can't look at something without, you know, seeing all of the suffering and everything that went into it. And I mean, I feel like that's just like, people don't want to talk about, you know, animals or what goes into making our food. I also find people are very often not wanting to talk about gender issues just as equally, you know, and it's one of those just things that we don't want to hear about, you know, on a main like global scale for some reason.
Well, hopefully with individuals like yourselves and those of us that advocate and speak out and try to educate the world, that things will change. You can only do it one person at a time and touch their hearts one at a time. But Emily, we want to thank you for being on the show.
Yes.
I was so looking forward to having you on the show. I knew that your passion was going to come out, and I'm hoping a lot of people learn from this and maybe think twice before they do what they do.
Absolutely.
But thank you so much. And again, please visit her website. Joe, if you could please, here we go, at www.aroomforelephants.net. Again, that's www.aroomforelephants.net. Thank you so much, Emily. And the show will be on demand tomorrow night. So I will send you the link so you get view it and see the great job that you did. We want to thank everyone in the chat room. Let's see, so a couple of people wrote a few things. Somebody says, that's creepy. And I asked, what's creepy? And somebody said, not the art. I meant the idea of mass producing a dead person's body parts for a sexy toy. Unless I misunderstood that was being discussed earlier. Sorry for the confusion. No confusion at all. Yeah, I'm the president and treasurer of the Emily Morgan Barwick Online Fan Club. I'd just like to say she did it phenomenally today. Yes, she did.
Yes, she did.
And thank everyone for joining us on chat, and thank everyone for tuning in yet another Sunday. Thank you, Joe, for the amazing job that you always do to make everything run so smooth. We're going to end the show with making an announcement. We'll always try to...
I forgot one thing.
What?
We got to thank our baby for being so quiet.
Oh, I know, our baby girl, except she thinks she's a cat. That's serious. She goes like this on the futon, like cats do, right, on the little litter box. So not only does she have a Napoleon complex, she also thinks she's a cat.
Napoleon complex.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, that's cool. Hey, perfect family. Transgender dog that thinks she's a cat. Hey, no problem.
Yeah.
Anyway,
exactly.
On the show, we always try to make announcements that are trying to bring light the negative that people are talking about us transgender individuals and things like that. Well, today we're going to take a different twist. We're going to talk about the UFC, which is very pro-transgender individual. There is a fighter called Matt Matroni, and he made a very offensive and unnecessary comment. Matt Mitrione was suspended indefinitely by the UFC on Monday, hours after the heavyweight fighter and former NFL defensive lineman called transgender MMA competitor Fallon Fox a lying, sick, sociopathic, disgusting freak in an interview.
The UFC was appalled by the transphobic comments made by the heavyweight Matt Matroni today in an interview on the MMA Hour. The UFC said in a statement Monday evening, the organization finds Mr. Matroni's comments very offensive and wholly unacceptable. As a direct result of this significant breach of the UFC's code of conduct, Mr. Matroni's UFC contract has been suspended and the incident is being investigated.
It ended up being a nightmare for him. UFC President Dana White said on the UFC on Fox 7 conference call on Tuesday, "What was the point of that interview? There was no point in it. Now it's caused him a bunch of headaches and problems. It caused us a bunch of headaches and problems for no reason whatsoever. There was no upside."
Fallon Fox responded to Matroni's comments on her Facebook page Tuesday. Matt Matroni went well beyond disagreeing with the medical experts who say, "I should be able to compete as a woman," and personally attacked me as a fighter, as a woman, and as a human being. His comments do not reflect the spirit of our sport, where most competitors uphold values like respect and dignity.
The UFC announced in January it had drafted a fighter code of conduct which covered criminal and other behavior that could harm the reputation of the MMA body. The UFC is a friend and ally of the LGBT community and expects and requires all 450 of its athletes to treat others with dignity and respect. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, UFC. We love you guys. But remember to always love yourselves too. And I just pulled their earpiece off.
Yes.
Good night.
Couldn't screw that one up even worse, could you? Oh, we're still on.
We're still on. Good night.